Previously, we explored the long road and years of waiting that Edward, the son of Queen Victoria and Prince Albert, endured before he finally ascended the throne of the United Kingdom. Years spent in the shadow of a mother whose reign was monumental, unshakable, and deeply rooted in the moral and social values of the Victorian Age. Years spent as a prince who waited longer than any heir before him, growing older, learning from society rather than from power. And now, we move forward toward his life as King Edward VII. When Edward ascended the throne in 1901, following the death of Queen Victoria, he was no young, idealistic monarch. He was a man of nearly 60 years, shaped by decades of observation, disappointment, desire, and personal development outside the halls of political authority. He had lived among the people more than within the palace. He had spoken with diplomats, artists, industrialists, and aristocrats from across Europe long before he wore the crown. And because of that, he carried into his reign a perspective that was very different from that of his predecessors. From the very first days of his reign, Edward made one thing unmistakably clear: the monarchy would no longer stand apart. Under Queen Victoria, particularly in the later years of her reign, the monarchy had grown distant, solemn, and withdrawn from public life. Victoria's grief over the death of Prince Albert had cast a long shadow of silence and formality over the crown. The people felt it. Europe felt it. A veil of emotional distance had settled between sovereign and subject. Edward lifted that veil. He opened the doors of the palace, not only literally, but socially. He attended public events, greeted crowds with warmth, and spoke to people not only as their king, but as a man who understood conversation, emotion, and human presence. At social gatherings, dinners, charity events, races, operas, military reviews, Edward was there, and he was alive among the people. This was not shallow performance. This was strategy, a new kind of monarchy for a new century. Edward knew that the world of the 20th century would not be governed by royal authority alone. It would be built through relationships, diplomacy, and engagement. And he understood something rare among monarchs. Influence is not only written in treaties and laws. Influence is felt in conversation. His reign became known as the Edwardian era, and its character reflected his personality: elegant, confident, socially refined, artistically alive, and globally aware. Yet, beneath the glitter of social transformation, a deeper and more consequential work was taking place: international diplomacy. At that time, Europe was not a peaceful continent. It was a chessboard. And every major empire was preparing for a match that none wanted to name, but all felt was coming. Germany, under Kaiser Wilhelm II, who was Edward's own nephew, was rising rapidly in power, industry, and ambition. Wilhelm admired the military strength of Prussia and sought to make Germany the greatest power in Europe, especially at sea. But ambition, when paired with insecurity, becomes aggressive. Wilhelm believed Germany was not respected enough. And to gain respect, he built ships, many ships, fast, strong, modern. This was not simply national pride. This was challenge. And Edward saw the danger long before others did. Where his nephew pushed forward with loud declarations and expansion, Edward moved with silence and conversation. He knew that the fate of Europe would depend not only on armies, but on alliances. So he focused his diplomatic attention on France, a nation with whom Britain had clashed and competed for centuries. The rivalry between the two countries was deep, emotional, and multi-layered. But Edward believed that rivalry could be softened not by politics alone, but by human familiarity. He visited France, not as a distant figurehead, but as a man who understood the art of presence. He hosted meetings, attended dinners, laughed at jokes, walked through gardens, spoke to women and statesmen with equal attentiveness. The French press called him the peacemaker. And slowly, something that seemed impossible became reality. Britain and France formed a friendship, a diplomatic understanding, a partnership of trust. It became known as the Entente Cordiale, signed in 1904. This agreement would become one of the most important diplomatic foundations of the 20th century. Because when war would one day come, Britain and France would stand together. But Edward's diplomatic vision was not limited to France. He understood Russia, Italy, and even the uncertain tides of the Ottoman Empire. He understood that Europe was a system and that stability required balance. Meanwhile, at home, Edward faced political tensions of a different kind. The British Parliament was undergoing a shift in power. The House of Commons, representing the people, was growing in influence. The House of Lords, representing inherited privilege, was resisting change. Edward found himself walking a delicate line, not ruling by decree, but guiding through persuasion. He encouraged political moderation not by force, but by example. Yet beyond political affairs, Edward's human presence remained central. He believed in comfort, conversation, humor, presence. He believed that a monarch should be seen, not hidden. He believed people should feel that their king was alive among them. And the people believed him. They felt him. But time moves forward, and age brings a price. Edward was a heavy smoker. Cigars, cigarettes, day after day, year after year. His chest began to ache. His breath grew short. Doctors warned him to rest. But Edward replied, "A king does not take holidays from duty." He continued working. He read state papers. He met ambassadors. He watched Europe with a concerned and weary eye. Then, in the spring of 1910, his body could carry him no further. His heart weakened. Fluid filled his lungs. The king who had spent a lifetime among the people now lay surrounded by family, silent and fading. His final words, spoken slowly, were, "I have tried to do my duty." On May 6, 1910, King Edward VII died, at the age of 68. News traveled across the nation. Flags dropped. Shops closed. The streets fell quiet. World leaders came from across Europe to pay respect. Many of them the very leaders who just 4 years later would lead their nations into World War I. Because Edward had seen it coming. He had tried to hold Europe together with diplomacy, warmth, and familiarity. And though he could not prevent the storm, he had done everything a man could do. He left behind a monarchy that was warmer, more human, and connected to the world. He left behind alliances that would shape history. And he left behind a legacy built not on conquest, but on connection. This was King Edward VII, the bridge between the old world and the world that was about to break. In Berlin, Kaiser Wilhelm II, Edward's nephew, the son of his sister, Princess Victoria, watched these changes with suspicion and growing resentment. Wilhelm was determined to make Germany a world power. But where Edward achieved influence naturally, Wilhelm sought it forcefully. Edward's alliances felt, to Wilhelm, like a tightening circle, one designed to corner Germany and diminish his prestige. This was not merely politics. It was deeply personal. Wilhelm desired recognition, admiration, and dominance. Edward, with a calm presence and effortless diplomacy, received the respect Wilhelm had longed for. Their conflict was a clash between pride and poise, ambition and restraint. Even in family gatherings, their rivalry lingered beneath polite words. Edward's death left Wilhelm without an opposing force, without the one figure capable of easing his insecurity. The Edwardian world shimmered with elegance. Theatres, literature, and fine dress flourished. Britain stood at what appeared to be a golden height. But beneath the beauty lay a different truth. Nations were arming. Borders were tightening. Alliances were becoming rigid. The slightest spark could ignite catastrophe. And now, the one who had navigated these tensions with delicate balance was gone. Tension toward the First World War. Just 4 years after Edward's death, Europe erupted into the First World War. This war did not arrive suddenly. It was not born from one assassination, nor one dispute. It was the inevitable collision of ambitions, insecurities, alliances, and pride. Historians would later ask, had Edward lived longer, could the war have been prevented? We cannot know. But we do know this: without Edward's quiet diplomacy, Wilhelm moved more boldly. The balance of Europe fractured, and the world descended into a conflict that would reshape nations and cost millions of lives. Succession and the uncertain future. After Edward's death in 1910, the throne passed to his son, George V. A quieter and more reserved ruler, George would inherit not only the crown, but a continent standing at the edge of catastrophe. Europe would soon burn. Kings, emperors, and empires that had stood for centuries would fall. A world of glittering courts and royal pageantry would give way to trenches, smoke, and ruins. And so, the story of Edward VII leads not simply to his death, but to the very moment where the old world took its final breath. This is the legacy of Edward VII, a king who ruled with diplomacy instead of domination. A statesman who held Europe together by understanding people, not just politics. And a man whose absence revealed how fragile peace truly was. But the story does not end here. For now that Edward is gone and George sits on the throne, the world stands in a fragile balance. Old alliances strain. New political storms gather. And soon, the calm veneer of the Edwardian Age will shatter. George V, quieter, steadier, and far less flamboyant than his father, will inherit a crown at a moment when Europe is about to collapse into the unimaginable. King George will not only rule a nation. He will watch an entire world order crumble. This is where we go next. Thank you for watching.